Before we get stuck in, I just want to give a quick thank you shout out to my Mutt tier Patreons. We have Glad Goku, Dare Denny, Kale Bennett, That Jordo, Ken K of Warheads, Super Hyper Mecha SP Mark II, Cyrus the Skeptic, and new year, new pair of underpants. That's right, I change them yearly. Thank you. Hi, what's up? I'm Channel Pup, the mascot for the Level-Headed Fanboy. And today, there's just a lot of cobwebs around, it seems. Between 2016 and now, we've been treated to pretty major Spider-Man content releases on a very regular basis. In 2016, we had Spidey making an appearance in Captain America Civil War. The following year, he gets his own film with Homecoming. Following that, he's got a major role in Infinity War, then into the Spider-Verse, then the following year Endgame, and Far From Home, and so it goes. We are truly spoilt and have been for a very long time. But, hello, what's next? Where are we now? Is Spidey media slowing down? How will us hyper-fixated dorks survive without another piece of Spidey media to throw onto the pile and decide we collectively hate over on Twitter after 1 month? Well, that's what I'm here to discuss. But as always, if you're new here, hi. I know you've got tons of videos to choose from on this website, and it means a lot that you chose mine, so thanks. If you do want to be kept in the loop with the Spidey scoop, be sure to hit subscribe, and for those of you who already are, this video, like all of my videos, is made possible through the support of my incredible patrons. If you want to find out how you can become a patron and receive rewards, the link is in the description below, and for one-off monetary support, the link to the Ko-Fi will also be in the description below. Thank you. Right now, all is pretty quiet on the Spidey front. Obviously, it wasn't meant to be that way, as the third film in the Spider-Verse trilogy was originally stated to release this year. But with no announcements and no promotional material, I think it's a safe bet to say that's off the cards for this year. I mean, we have to take into account a lot has been going on in the entertainment world over the past year. We had the writers and actors strikes, and then on top of that, some of the animation staff who worked on Across the Spider-Verse shared their accounts of improper management of the animation staff, time crunches, while also expressing little faith that Spider-Verse 3 would release as previously advertised. And with the recent revelations that Haley Steinfeld and Jake Johnson are yet to record any dialogue for Beyond the Spider-Verse, we're probably going to be waiting a ball-busting amount of time for the resolution to that incredible cliffhanger, which sucks, but what would suck more would be the very real people who bring us these incredible works of fiction being mistreated. So hey, I'd rather they run a comfortable ship and we get there in one piece than a ship that moves full speed ahead into an iceberg. Too soon? What I mean to say is, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I think all of us conscientious folks will enjoy the movie that much more if we're not distracted by behind-the-scenes horror stories. But we've been eating really well for a long time anyway, and I wanted to make a new Spidey video looking to the future of the franchise until I realized, well, there kinda isn't one aside from that. Not in plain sight, and no AAA video game or tentpole blockbusters either. Well, okay, a little exaggerated. It's kind of half the case. Sony have obligations to uphold in order to retain the rights to Spider-Man and potentially lucrative IPs within that to play with. So yes, we can expect 2 brand new quasi-Spider-Man films this year. The first up is Madam Web. Now, as I was writing my notes, I paused for a good few seconds while I thought of something to say about Madam Web. Like Morbius was ahead of its release, Madam Web is very much the internet's punchline right now. Because who the hell asked for this? And while I could make the case that Morbius could just be another vampire movie that could have been entertaining in its own right, look how much we are trying to avoid talking about the elephant in the room with Madam Web. This totally original film that definitely has no ties to any far bigger IPs. No, 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 no. You've got a movie where Ezekiel Sims is a scary villain who really resembles Spider-Man. He's like an evil Spider-Man. Wonder if they're in any way related. Who gains powers after researching spiders in the Amazon, and now wants to kill a load of women, who it turns out are all destined to become Spider-Women. We've got this Spider-Woman and this Spider-Woman with... Where have I seen that logo before? Well, definitely not on Venom, that's for sure. And bringing this team together is clairvoyant and paramedic Cassandra Webb. The official synopsis boasts a change from the typical genre, which is, yeah, really great, yeah. Typical was my go-to genre of films for a good while, but I must admit, I got tired of typical movies like those silly Spider-Man movies, so it's nice to see Sony Pictures ready and willing to scratch the itch of this MCU-fatigued camper. Those other films were just too typical for me. I want something really out there. I want Madam Web. Now, if you already know of Madam Web, chances are you'll know her from... you might want to sit down for this one. You'll know her from Spider-Man. I know, of all things! Madam Web and Spider-Man, what are the odds? As she's portrayed as this kind of blind, unwell old woman with the power to see into the future, and this comes to Spidey's aid from time to time. Sometimes she's a little more cosmic, tapping into multiversal elements. She's probably most well known for her appearance in Spider-Man the Animated Series back in the 90s. Now, I've got to admit, I think this kind of stuff has its place in Spidey mythology for a story or two, but this is a part of Spidey lore that I'd probably like to keep a good 10 feet away from Spidey's films. So it's just as well that's probably the case. As far as Sony's little cinematic universe goes, this is probably the first instance of a hero-centric film, rather than one where they desperately try to rationalize turning a villain or anti-hero into a barely off-the-tracks protagonist, and I think including the different Spider-Women was admittedly a cool idea. I don't know, this stuff isn't really in my wheelhouse when it comes to Spidey stories. We've all got our eras that we gravitate towards more than others, and I'm not as fixated on late 80s through 90s Spidey comics in the way that I am the 70s and 60s. Does that nullify Madam Web's right to any kind of cinematic representation? Of course not. I'm honestly surprised she hasn't made an appearance in the Spider-Verse movies yet, but at the same time, boy does this movie ever not look very good. For starters, boy do I ever hope Madam Web will become blind and sick in this film, because it would be quite a representational L for this progressive girl power movie to take the character of an old woman who overcame her disability and illness to become a sidekick heroine, and then represent that as sexy young Dakota Johnson for the entirety of the run. I don't know, maybe they're saving that for the sequel. Funny joke. This film is just screaming for Spider-Man to be a part of it, and without that, it looks like some legally distinct knockoff. But aside from that, the trailers and promotional material leave me with no other kind of impression. The real root cause of my negative feelings towards all this are who's in charge of the productions. This is another Avi Arad, Matt Tolmach, and Amy Pascal effort, and if you're looking for the common contingent among the weaker Spider-Man cinematic releases, these names being in charge tend to be the smoking gun. The golfing quality between The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 falls down to the changing of the guard from the late Laura Ziskin and Alvin Sargent as the creative driving force to Avi Arad, Matt Tolmach, and so it goes. The only good projects this team have managed to get out there are Venom Let There Be Carnage, just for the pure shithousery of it, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which manages to have moments of greatness in spite of the very obvious influence of the terrible trio. That's the power of a director and cast that actually give a damn. Now, there are a lot of rumors and bad press swirling around that this film was meant to feature a Spider-Man cameo, that these cameos were filmed by two actors, once with Andrew Garfield before reshooting with Tom Holland before finally deciding against a Spidey cameo because it wouldn't make any sense given that the film is set in 2003. And it's like, if that were the case, I don't want the MCU Spider-Man tangled up with this kind of thing, and if you're gonna bring back Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, do it for something good. That's not me saying that this film isn't going to be good. I mean, I doubt it, but that's not me saying for definite or anything like that, but this ain't the project to bring back Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in. I don't want him to be the Spider-Man of the Sonyverse, put it that way. There are also rumors that the iconic "with great power there must also come great responsibility" quote will feature, now reworded as "when you take responsibility, you will gain great powers," which is the kind of thing I'd expect to find on the back of a bootleg Spider-Man action figure, but these are all just rumors at the end of the day, and I haven't forgotten how the internet led me to believe that Morbius was some incompetently made so bad it's good dumpster fire, when the reality was actually way worse. It was just a boring movie that failed to get me interested in its premise, story, or character. And I feel like that's the worst case scenario for this one, while the best case scenario is that we get something wonderfully dumb and drunk on its own energy, like Venom 2. But if Madam Web has just far too many Spidey protagonists for you in 2024, well then don't fret, because there'll be Spider-Man Villains 2 in a completely separate movie. Kraven the Hunter, another rad Tulmac and Pascal joint, which serves as an origin story for Kraven. And, well, good luck with that, Chief. I think what makes most Spidey villains so fun is that they're open to quite a bit of interpretation in a way that, say, Batman's villains aren't. You've got some fairly well-scribed personalities like Norman Osborn and Dr. Octavius, but with villains like, say, Electro, Kraven, Rhino, most of their characteristics are in their design and abilities, so there's quite a few different ways you can play around with these characters and explore them. The thing is, if you're looking for the star of your tentpole blockbuster, well, that's not really gonna do it. People are going to see a superhero movie mainly for name recognition, and Kraven the Hunter doesn't exactly inspire incredible character stories. When we think of the best that this character has to offer, we tend to think Kraven's Last Hunt. And guess what, buddy boy? That's a Spider-Man story. The best aspects of these characters are the different ways they've interacted with Spider-Man. The one Spidey villain that could probably survive the best without ties to Spidey is Venom, and let me tell you, if the Venom movies feel incomplete without Spider-Man, a Kraven the Hunter movie is probably doomed out the gate. Dragging me through his childhood years isn't going to change that. We know Rhino is also going to be in the film, so I suppose I'm looking forward to just seeing how this film adapts these two characters, but I'm not really looking forward to anything else here. As far as movie offerings go, that's about all we have for 2024 for Spidey, and neither of them inspire much excitement from me. I don't see myself going out of my way to see either of these movies unless you can promise me that if I do review those movies, each review will reach 100,000 views. Both of them. If you guys band together and demand it, I'll do it. But I'm not going out of my way to see them without some kind of incentive. Tell you what, get me to $300 a month on Patreon, and I'll go see the stupid Madam Web and stupid Kraven movies, and I'll review my little heart out. I'll give them all the benefit of the doubt in the world, and I will review them as the mascot for the level-headed fanboy. I will give them the fairest shake anyone could ever give them. $300 a month on Patreon. Madam Web and Rhino reviews. That's the deal I'm making for yous. So, here's where things get a bit vague. The writing of MCU Spider-Man 4 has likely started now that the writer's strike is over, but there's no word on when we can expect it to start shooting. Tom Holland is allegedly taking some time off of acting to focus on family life following the failure of Crowded Room, but I don't doubt that a certain deal of contractual blackmailing and wads of cash will likely pry him out of his home. Then all the publicity will just be saying how the script was so good Tom Holland just had to come out of retirement. That's how it works. Well, there's rumors flying around left and right as to what MCU Spider-Man 4 will entail. Zendaya will likely return as MJ. I'm hoping that will be dealt with tactfully though, given that No Way Home felt like a great send-off for both Ned and MJ. I hope they won't just immediately be back together and everything's okay. And supposedly we're getting a villain that has never been adapted before in live action. And I mean, at this point it's gotta be Scorpion, right? We set him up at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming and then we never saw him again, and I do get why. He wouldn't have necessarily fit into that story they were telling. But now that we have a more back-to-basics Spidey story without ties to the Avengers or a revealed identity, surely now is the time to include Scorpion. Well, there's also a lot of speculation that the next Spidey film will tie in with the new Daredevil series, but given the almost schizophrenic development of that show, I do wonder if a big IP like Spidey is going to be too tied to that. I mean, okay, it would be cool to see Spidey finally throw down with Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, but then there's speculation that they'll be continuing the Marvel team-up approach with Daredevil, which I'm not intrinsically against, provided it's still Spidey's movie and that Spidey isn't going to reveal his secret identity to him. But then there are reports suggesting that MCU Spider-Man 4 will be a street-level civil war, factoring in the Defenders, and just... No. That sounds cool, but please, for the love of God, just make a Spider-Man movie. If the Defenders are part of the backdrop of the story, fine, but I don't want them playing an active role in this. I think it's time to just do a Spider-Man movie, and I will explain why in a bit. For now, I also just want to talk a little bit about the reports that are suggesting that there's conflict between Sony and Marvel Studios, with Marvel Studios wanting MCU Spider-Man 4 to be a more grounded street-level story, but Sony wanting to follow the high that was No Way Home by bringing back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield again. Now, again, I think so little is known about this film that I think 98% of everything we're hearing is more than likely just absolute arse gravy, but I will humor this for the sake of a discussion. The right thing to do for MCU Spider-Man 4, to me, is to make a really good meat and potatoes Spider-Man movie. After all, that's what the final scene of Spider-Man No Way Home proposes, with Peter finally in the most faithful depiction of the classic suit swinging through the city. Have a story where Peter Parker is a nobody trying to navigate adult life with absolutely nobody to help him, and being Spider-Man is just kind of his escape from that. Spider-Man is very much the real him. After a trilogy of team-up movies where Spidey's had a support network, be it his friends at Midtown, or Aunt May, or other superheroes, there's something incredibly titillating about No Way Home's proposal of a Spider-Man film with themes of isolation and loneliness. It'd make a great change of pace for the MCU, that's for sure. So it would absolutely be the wrong thing to bring back Tobey and Andrew Spideys. But I am not against the idea of them coming back later down the line for a dedicated Spider-Verse film. So not a Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. They don't return as supporting characters in one of his movies. We just have, like, say, a film that is about the trio, that can get us reacquainted with their home dimensions. Better yet, Sony, make films people are actually asking for and give us an amazing Spider-Man 3 and Spider-Man 4 to give us conclusions to the stories of those Spider-Men. The thing is, I don't know if there's an embargo on live-action Spidey films outside of the MCU, but there's money on the table and great ideas. I think No Way Home offers an adequate send-off for Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spideys, but not only are there ideas still left on the table, there are genuinely really cool ideas you could still explore. We've seen them as supporting characters in Tom Holland's story. Now let's really celebrate these guys suiting up again with the kind of fanfare that would have detracted from No Way Home. And what better reason is there to make a film other than that it would just be cool? Back to MCU Spider-Man 4 though, I think the ending of Spider-Man No Way Home proposes exciting ideas that I am desperate to see them follow up on in the next film. But I am having a bit of crisis of faith here. Same old story, same old song and dance regarding Sony. I don't have a great deal of faith, and studio interference is the bane of a Sony project's existence. But now we're living in a day and age where I don't really have a great deal of faith in Marvel Studios either. Recent films and TV projects have shown that Marvel Studios are not afraid to devalue the events of previous projects, and that sometimes they overshoot in terms of scale when it's not really warranted. So I do naturally feel a little concerned that the next Spider-Man film will undercut the events of Spider-Man No Way Home, won't really explore the themes of isolation and loneliness in favor of just going big again. Maybe with a team-up, maybe with some street-level Civil War BS, or maybe they'll just once again dip their hand into the multiverse cookie jar. Considering Spidey's going to factor into the next Avengers film in a big way as well, I get the sense that our smaller scale, more grounded Spidey jaunt may end up being short-lived. Which was admittedly something Spidey has run into in the MCU before, with Infinity War's unfortunate placement almost directly after Spider-Man Homecoming, where Spidey chose to be a more street-level hero. I think they made it work, but I won't deny that it's a little clunky and does give off some mixed messages. But there is one MCU Spidey project that we do know a little more about. An animated prequel TV series formerly known as Spider-Man Freshman Year, now dubbed Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which becomes hilarious when you consider that Marvel have gone out of their way to make that the moniker of Raimi's Spider-Man post No Way Home. Now, this one is actually expected to release this year with Hudson Thames as Spider-Man. Imagine being named after two different rivers. As well as Hugh Dancy as Doc Ock, Zeno Robinson as Harry Osborn, and Charlie Cox reprising his role as Daredevil. Now, I mentioned that this is a bit of a prequel series, however, it's more of an Elseworlds kind of deal, like an expanded What If. While this Spidey will be taking cues from MCU Spidey, there are some new twists. Norman Osborn is set to play a sizable role in this series, with artwork hinting at a possible mentor relationship adjacent to Tony Stark in Civil War. Now, MCU Spidey is often criticized for how much of the greater MCU factors into Spidey's stories, and how much it kind of tries to distance itself from Spidey's origin stories, and I think if you fall into that camp of being critical of that, this may be the show for you. While not confirmed, it does look to be exploring Spidey's earlier years, and I'd say it's at least fairly likely to touch on the Spider-Bite and Uncle Ben. Not to mention, with this universe having its own Norman Osborn and Doc Ock, you've got a bit more Spidey world building in there rather than Marvel Universe world building like the movies. Now, if the art style in the show is anything like the art style seen in the concept art, I will be a very happy chappy. I was pretty underwhelmed with the art style of Marvel's first animated show, What If, for just kind of being a begrudging imitation of live action with no real distinct look. But if this artwork is anything to go by, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is oozing with 1960s charm calling back to Ditko's Spidey. Whether or not this will take place in the modern world, however, remains to be seen. It'd be kinda sweet if it was set in the 60s though. Now, obviously gaming is a huge part of Spidey multimedia, and there was a massive leak at Insomniac Games back in December revealing what's to come for Insomniac's take on Spidey. And I'm going to be talking about none of that here, as it's ill-gotten info. So no news. We'll be waiting a bit to see what comes next, but a new Insomniac Spidey adventure may be around the corner sooner than you think. So for the last part of this, we're taking things back to Spidey's roots, the comics, because there are some new exciting developments going on. So I haven't read much of the current Zeb Wells run of The Amazing Spider-Man for myself, but the general consensus from those who have read much more of it than I have is that the run is in pretty dire straits, and from what I've seen, and I hold my hand up and say this is by no means an objective critique, just my own 2 cents, yeah, it sounds rough. I understand Spider-Man is a long-running series with various jumping off and on points, so naturally characters will reset to certain status quos every once in a while. I get why that happens, but there's egregious character stagnation, and then there's Zeb Wells' Spider-Man. Spider-Man in the current run feels like a caricature of the down-on-his-luck webhead to the point where it feels like Peter doesn't even want to help himself. This makes the hero that could be you quote feel more like a threat. Peter's emotional maturity has been reduced to less than it was in his teenage years. Rather than feeling like a properly realized character, he just feels like a terminally single schlub with no job or prospects because of an editorial mandate. And that's exactly what's happening here. So I don't, truth be told, put all the blame on Zeb Wells. But it's not even helped by the fact that Spider-Man isn't exactly a formidable power fantasy either. Begging Tombstone for mercy, begging Norman for help in a fight with the Vulture. What's going on here? Who is this? So why am I so hyped up about the future of the comics if the Amazing Spider-Man comics suck? Well, it looks like the tides are changing for Spidey comics. First of all, we've got the new Marvel Ultimate Universe, so naturally with that we've got Ultimate Spider-Man from Jonathan Hickman, an alternate universe free from the mandates of Marvel editorial, and from the jump, we have a really unique spin on Spidey's origins. It's quite a departure, but it's an exciting twist. Alright, get ready to hear this, it's gonna give Marvel editorial a hernia, but get ready, okay? Peter Parker is an adult, a father. He's had kids with Mary Jane Watson, but he's not Spider-Man. Not yet. And Uncle Ben is still alive and well, going into the press business with his buddy J. Jonah Jameson. Everything is different, but not necessarily better, as Peter is sleepwalking his way through life, feeling he's lost all control over it. What he doesn't realize is that his life, and beyond that, the universe, has been tampered with by the Maker, who has prevented almost all of the heroes from ever becoming who they'd otherwise become, Spidey included. Also, he can maintain control over this timeline. However, when Tony Stark discovers the grim truth about this timeline, he tried to undo it. In retaliation, the Makers Council enacted a terrorist attack on Manhattan and framed Stark for it. In the attack, among the many lives claimed were that of May Parker and Norman Osborn. And it's clear that Harry isn't holding up very well, and there's a Green Goblin in town. Before the incident, Tony Stark left Peter everything he'd need to become Spider-Man, should he choose to reclaim the life he should have lived and help in the battle against the Maker. And so, tired of sleepwalking his way through life, And with Mary Jane's blessing, Peter chooses to become Spider-Man once more, and we are yet to see that story unfold. Now, this is obviously quite a radical new origin with cosmic ramifications, and that's all neat, but the story of this matured Peter Parker, who has created a life for himself but chooses his destiny, what we have here repairs the agency and dignity of comic Spider-Man. Not only that, it's so fresh, so exciting to see where this will go. Now, my headcanon is that the universe that the maker messed with was perhaps the original Ultimate Universe from the 2000s. I know that that universe was destroyed in an incursion, but maybe it's all better now and the maker just messed with it. I get it, the whole Ultimate thing is more of a label to suggest a different continuity, but a guy can theorize. But that isn't all, as 616 Spidey may have some good stories left in him after all, with Spectacular Spider-Men, written by Greg Weisman and illustrated by Humberto Ramos, expected in March. So, why is this exciting? Well, first of all, the pedigree here. Greg Weisman is probably best known among Spidey fans as the writer of the Spectacular Spider-Man animated series, which absolutely lived up to its title. It's one of the best Spidey shows out there. And Humberto Ramos is one of the more prolific modern Spidey artists. I will admit his work is an acquired taste, very angular, very stylized, but I do enjoy it nonetheless. It's definitely grown on me. This new ongoing series focuses on both Peter and Miles as they navigate their superhero and personal lives together, which, I mean, there's more than enough evidence to prove that that's a fun dynamic. I don't expect this book to set the world on fire by any means. It will still likely be bogged down by Marvel editorial, and it's not exactly going to reunite Peter and MJ or anything like that. But with Greg Weisman penning the stories, I am looking forward to what he's cooking up. He clearly has a good grip on Spidey as a character and the stories that make him great, as evidenced by his work on the Spectacular Spider-Man animated series, so I'm really excited to see him working on another Spidey project. So that's the near future for Spidey. 2 movies that don't excite me in the slightest, an animated series that sounds pretty cool, 2 new comic runs, and hopefully a Spider-Verse and MCU sequel someday. Right now, I think what I'm most excited about is the new Ultimate Spider-Man, just because it managed to give us the matured Peter we've been asking for, but with a game-changing new twist, and I cannot wait to see where this goes. But I'm going to pass it over to you guys now. What part of Spidey's future are you most excited about? What are your hopes for MCU Spider-Man 4? Or Beyond the Spider-Verse? Or just anything like that? Comment below, discuss. And as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, be sure to hit subscribe, hit the like button. We are so close to 100k now. I can taste it. And if you guys can get me there, you will have my gratitude. But then also there is the Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name in the credits of these videos, as well as get little previews of my very own take on Spider-Man in a new fan film. The wheels aren't quite turning just yet, but there's a plot outline, there's going to be some concept art going out, just a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. Now, a special shout out does go to my Patreons in the $5 and above tiers. They are Kalex, Richard Rogers, Glad Goku, Dare Denny, SSS06, Kale Bennett, That Jordo, Ken K of Warheads, Dazzle Fizzle, Super Hyper Mecha SP Mark II, Surus the Skeptic, A New Year, A New Pair of Underpants, that's right, I change them yearly, and Vera Wild. I would also like to thank my recent Ko-Fi donors. We've got Channel Pig, Kale, KaleX, Somebody, and Sonic the Screwdriver. It really does mean a lot to me, you guys. Especially with January's ad revenue kicking my ass. But that's where I'm gonna leave it, folks. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.